All right, we're getting close. I see a lot of introductions. Thank you, everybody, for being here. We got people from all over the country. Um, so thank you. I see Maryland. Obviously, we're kind of based in Florida. I see Knoxville. I saw Wisconsin. I see some towns that I don't know where they're from, but Captain Hodgson from Union City, welcome for sure. And KCSO, Aaron, welcome. We're going to give it one more minute. We just heard from Michael Whitmore. Will there be a recording? Yes, I'm recording it right now. Everybody who registered, I'm assuming they wanted to see it. If they couldn't make it, I'm going to email everybody who registered, including the people on it, with the recording. We'd love for you to share it. We want this message to get out, and we want more people to, work with Pat and what his group does and see the message. The message is what's most important. All right, we're going to go ahead and get started. It is being recorded. If you don't know who I am Mike Schentrup. I'm the founder of Advanced Police Concepts. Wow, we have somebody from Toronto. Pat, that's awesome. All right. Hey, listen, the great men and women of law enforcement deserve awesome training from the best instructors in topics that matter. In APC, over the last year or so, this is probably our 12th free webinar we're doing just to get information out there on all different types of topics. Because I believe that, you can't pay for everything. Some things are so important. We're just going to help people get a little bit better, and maybe it piques a little interest in you, and you ask for some more and you try to figure out what that is. I got a few slides, and then I'm going to turn it over to Pat here in a second. APC is a national company. We're all over, and we do a lot of in-person, we do online, and we do webinars. We had a paid webinar yesterday on overdose investigations. We've been very blessed. I have a great cadre of instructors. And as you can see, not only have we been to a lot of places, we're going a lot of places this year, including our first trip to the West Coast in Bakersfield, California. But as we talk about officer wellness, I want to talk about our next generation of cops and how we can help them improve and be better during their field training program. We are a proud sponsor of the second annual Southeastern Field Training Officer Association Conference, their FTO conference. It's going to be in Fort Walton Beach in May. I mean, that's going to be really nice. That's the venue right there. The venue's great, don't get me wrong, but the product and the value that they're going to bring is phenomenal. I was there last year in the inaugural, and I was super impressed. The speakers are off the charts. Last year, Mark DeBona spoke, and Mark is tremendous. I think Mark's coming back. Mark, I think you're coming back. So I can't wait to see you again. If you'd like to register for this, there's a early bird sign up right now, only $275 for a 3-day conference at seftoa.org. That's SEFTOA, Southeastern Field Training Officer Association. Yep, Mark is going to be there, and it's going to be a wonderful conference at a wonderful venue. I think we already have probably 30 people registered, and it's not till May. We just started advertising it. So we're super excited about that. All right, so now you have to do like the 30-second thing of what Mike Schentrup teaches. And and maybe, and maybe not. Maybe you don't have to see it. Oh, there we go. Maybe. Maybe not. All right, we're going to move on. Anyway, that was a quick little promo for one of my online courses. I've had a lot of people say I do a pretty good job. I don't think it's perfect, right? It's online training, but it's over 2 weeks too. So it doesn't matter what shift you work. So if you're a commander and you want to get train up some of your folks, if you're a sergeant, you want to get this training, or you see that that spark of somebody who's going to be a supervisor later. It's over a 2 week period. You work at your own pace. It begins for February 20th. It's only $99, and you can register at advancedpoliceconcepts.com. Now I'm going to turn it over to Pat. So Pat, I'm going to stop sharing, stop talking about Advanced Police Concepts, and we're going to let you get to work.
Thanks, Mike. I appreciate it. I want to thank you for putting this on. I met Mike a couple months ago. He did a training at my department, the leadership training that went really well. I got a chance to talk with him. We were connected on LinkedIn, sat down and chatted for just a few minutes, and he came through and put this together. So thank you very much. I appreciate it. And thank you all for joining us. This is
Pat, I got to say, you know, we talked for a little bit. I was impressed. I looked at your website. I see what you're doing. I agree with what you're doing. I think a lot of it's important. We talk about the mental health aspect, but you're taking a more holistic approach.
Absolutely.
To officer wellness and well-being. And it's not just that one thing, even though that's important. Yep. There's a bunch of other stuff that I think you kind of integrate, which I found really interesting after looking at your website. So I'm excited to hear you talk. I'm going to be here just like everybody else for this whole thing. So go ahead and share your screen and take it away. I'll kind of monitor the chat room for you. See if
awesome. Thank you. Yeah.
Okay.
Yep. All right. I'm going to jump right into it with y'all guys. So one of the things is I am from the Southeast. So there's some people on here that aren't from the Southeast. So when I say y'all, I'm referring to a collective group, just a little Southernese lesson real quick before we get in. So it could be specifically y'all as in law enforcement, or it could be just y'all that are on the webinar. But it's a little word we use in the South. All right. So my company's Caim Coaching. It consists of myself and my partner, my beautiful bride, Rachel. She's not able to join us today, but she is the other half of this organization. We feel that we are uniquely gifted in bringing these three topics, money, marriage, and mental resilience, to folks. So how we founded our company is I noticed about 5 years into my career that my perspective and thought process on life had changed drastically, and it was impacting our lives. So we kind of, as the years go by, we started noticing that a lot of my coworkers were having marriage problems. When I first got hired at the agency I'm at now, I had 3 guys on my shift married to a girl's named Rachel. I'm the only one still married to the same girl named Rachel within 12 years. So we noticed marriages was a problem. We noticed a lot of our coworkers struggling with financial issues. So we realized that finance was a problem. So I got into Dave Ramsey Financial Peace University and started facilitating that. Then it just spun from there. My wife's background, I just got my master's in mental health counseling. So I am actually entering a new side job of counseling people on the side. My wife has a master's in marriage and family therapy. So we took our knowledge of mental health, we took our knowledge of finance, we took our knowledge of marriage from mistakes that we've made, from difficulties we've had, from experiences of just sharing with others. And we combined it into Caim coaching. Caim is an old Gaelic term that means circle of protection, or commonly used as a prayer circle. That pretty much sums us up. Often the officers ask after a few years, is there something wrong with me? Why can I focus at work and be so spot on at work, but I can't have a conversation with my significant other at home? Why am I so irritable? Why am I so angry? So what's going on in my life? Why can't I remember things? Well, that's the first portion of what we're going to talk about, the mental resilience and mental health in law enforcement. And this is going to be a quick overview with just an hour, but there's a lot of good information in it. This job can create the perfect storm of stress. This is the most stressful career field in the world. It's not highly paid, so there's money stress. Nobody's taught us how to manage money overall. We tie an identity to this job because this job demands so much of us. And even when we go to parties, people pigeonhole us into what we do, not who we are. And we get caught up in that. And that bleeds over into the marriage. Shift work can be great, but shift work can also be really damaging to a relationship because you're not spending that quality time with your significant other. And we isolate our experiences. And we'll talk more about these topics here as we get along. Shelly, there will be plenty of time for questions and answers as we get on through there. So we'll get to you if you just want to put it in the chat. So one of the things that we commonly tell people is what's important. We say it's God and family, and we usually generally put the job way down there at the bottom of the list. And, you know, that is oftentimes accurate, but sometimes it's not so accurate. And when we're really being honest, as law enforcement officers, oftentimes what is really important to us, job, 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 job. We say that everything else is, but we so often will take this job and put it above the priorities that we've listed in life. So too much time on the job can lead to divorce, health problems, a false sense of identity. To remain healthy, your body needs 8 hours of awake time, breaking away from law enforcement, not to be focused on the stress and the energy that this job consumes when you're on the streets or even doing investigations. There's multiple sources of stress in this job, as we all know. Most of the research indicates that the majority of our stress comes from the administration. And I think that's because psychologically, we get into this and we all look up to the administration. We aspire to kind of be like them in many ways. And as we go along in our career, we see people in administration that are doing great work, but sometimes we lose confidence in them because of our perceptions. So that causes a lot of internal stress. Then we have the added stresses that everybody else has of the family. Not a typically great paying job, but we do have a lot of opportunity to make money in many agencies. And your coworkers. It's a strange dynamic that we have coworkers that'll step out and they'll take a bullet for us. They'll fight somebody to death for us if they need to. But yet that same person, we don't really trust them when we're going through the promotional process. We think they're out to get us, to get that one leg up because it's a very competitive field. So that adds another layer of stress. And what I find interesting is the street. Most officers in researching that you question about where their stress comes from, at the end of the day, the street is not the most stressful event in their life. We kind of expect what we encounter on the street. We don't necessarily expect to encounter those type of issues and problems either at home or with coworkers or from the administration. So those are some of the main sources of stress that we find in law enforcement. And what's law enforcement culture teach us to deal with stress? It's alcohol, running around on your significant other, the gallow humor. So where does that end? When does it quit being a joke and when does it start being real? And how can we tell that when our coworkers are using that humor? Because it is so common. We also isolate ourselves. We don't talk to anybody outside of law enforcement. So we get caught up in that same type of mentality of everybody kind of shares a common view, which is great for unity. It's great that we have a kinship, but it can be dangerous because we don't always perceive the world exactly as it is being in law enforcement because we deal with the worst of people. So here are some healthy ideas to reduce stress. You can eat healthy, exercise. I know I've been horrible about periods in my career exercising. I'll go long periods of time where I'm great, and then I'll just completely drop off and quit exercising altogether. Find somebody outside of law enforcement to connect to emotionally. Develop ways to maintain the identity that you had prior to being a cop and those hobbies that you enjoyed. Continue to expand your mind and learn new hobbies. And one of the greatest things to do is we did this job because we love to give back. We're servants at our heart. So find another way to serve. Find something outside of law enforcement to give back to your community, whether you're a coach, a mentor, a volunteer of some sort, but outside of that law enforcement capacity. Now, one of the huge stigmas is mental health in law enforcement. And there's this thing called PTSD, the post-traumatic stress disorder. Well, I want to kind of put a little bit different spin on that. First of all, I'd like to reterm it to PTSI, post-traumatic stress injury, because really at the end of the day, this is just an injury. It is not a disorder. Disorder gives the impression that it can't be healed, it can't be fixed. Where injury gives, everybody knows you can rehab an injury. You can fix anything that's been broken. And all this is an injury in the brain. I can't tell you, if I go out and I break my leg today chasing a bad guy, I can tell you the exact day and time I broke my leg. With PTSI, the only difference is all that we deal with eventually weighs us down. And I can't tell you exactly which one of those incidences in my life caused the post-traumatic stress injury. When I was building this PowerPoint, it dawned on me that every time in the past 18 years that I've worked a traffic crash where an airbag has gone off, I remember one specific incident from my rookie year in FTO when I chased a car that ended tragically in a crash that killed a young man. And it was the first time I had smelled an airbag deployment. So every time since then, I smell that airbag deployment, my brain instantly jumps back to that incident. Then it jumps back to what I'm working on. It's a split second. Nobody on the street would notice it. Nobody would see it. But that tie has been put into my brain. It doesn't enable me from doing my job, but it does distract me for just a second as I'm working. And those are the type of things that add up over time. What are some of the common reactions created by trauma? Anger, fear, and anxiety. That's one of the first things. Anger is the first thing that I think my wife and I noticed changed about me about the 5-year point in this career. Is everything made me angry. And I started realizing that my reactions are kind of out of proportion to the offenses. So I started digging around and trying to figure out what was going on. And a lot of it was stress related. Trauma not only impacts you emotionally, but it impacts you cognitively. So the way you think. Stress can cause confusion, poor problem-solving abilities. It can create either a heightened or a lowered sense of alertness. So you may be super alert, or you may be a little bit muted in how you're perceiving things. So I don't know if there's any therapists or psychologists, psychiatrists online. If you are, this point is for illustrative purposes. This isn't an actual biological demonstration of what happens to the brain in trauma. Okay, so you have your hemispheres of your brain, your left and your right hemispheres in your brain. You can see on the screen the different functions that the sides of the brain have. Well, what happens during a traumatic event, or oftentimes with law enforcement, the accumulation of traumatic events that we experience, a brick wall begins to be built between those hemispheres of your brain. And that brick wall keeps getting built and getting built. So your brain's not communicating in the way that it was naturally designed to communicate. So the great thing about the brain is it's neuroplastic. So it's going to find a way to communicate. So it starts using other methods to communicate, other routes to communicate. And that's kind of what happens just as a visual of suffering through traumatic events and post-traumatic stress. One of the greatest ways to cure and treat post-traumatic stress are programs like EMDR, ART, accelerated resolution therapy. They're bilateral stimulation techniques done at a therapist's office or at a clinician's office. And what that does, bilateral stimulation, is simply engaging both sides of your brain. So commonly when I'm treating a client with trauma, I'm going to use ART because that's what I've been trained in. So I'm having them do eye movements while they think about events in their lives. They're playing a movie of their life through their head. Envision these eye movements engaging both sides of the brain. And it's almost like a wrecking ball coming through and knocking out those bricks. It's not touching the brain, not hurting the brain, but it's knocking down that brick wall. So it's allowing the brain to go back to the natural way that it was meant to process and function. And that's why I believe those bilateral stimulation techniques are so good at treating post-traumatic stress. So to stay resilient, there's a few things you can do. Don't focus on things you can't control. So many of the things as a police officer are outside of our control, whether it's done at the administration, whether it's done by politicians, or whether it's the calls we go to. We don't get to pick and choose the calls that we go to. So don't focus so much on what you can't control. Focus on what you can control. Focus on your response. Focus on what makes you feel comfortable. Don't have a victim mindset. Oftentimes we walk around like Eeyore. We start, oh, I can't do anything. I'm just a lowly patrol officer. I don't have the authority or the ability. That's not true. Guys, we can influence from any rank in a department. And you've just got to lead and don't fall into that victim mindset. Other things is, don't let this job become your identity. Remember the people and things that you did before you became a law enforcement officer. Exercise, diet, and proper sleep are probably the top 3 things that you can do to remain resilient. So here's creating and promoting well-being. Personally, what you can do is you can create those healthy responses: exercise, meditation, prayer. You can practice resiliency techniques. I teach virtually all of my clients combat breathing, or also known as box breathing. So combat breathing, simply inhale through your nose. We're designed to breathe through our noses. So you inhale for 4 seconds, you hold it for 4 seconds, you exhale for 4 seconds, and then you hold it for 4 seconds. If you do several rotations of that, 5 or 6, you're going to start feeling your blood pressure come down. You're going to start feeling your brain calm down. It re-engages the logical portion of your brain and gets you out of that emotional portion of your brain. It's a great technique, easy to do, and you can do it anywhere. Things that agencies can do, they can do peer support. They can create groups to help with that. They can do effective debriefs after traumatic incidences, not bringing 30, 40, 50 cops into a room with one therapist sitting at the front of the room saying, hey, let's sit around and talk about our feelings. We know that's not going to work. So we need to re-examine agency-wide how we do these debriefs and do stuff that is going to work. You're going to use smaller groups. It's going to be a little more intimate, and it may take a little more time, but at the end of the day, it's worth it because this is going to build time into these individuals' careers. This is a very, very important message. Oftentimes, we don't hear this message that post-traumatic growth is possible. People can grow in positive ways after suffering through PTSI. They can survive the traumas of police work and they can grow from it, and they become better people and better officers having survived that. So that is a really powerful message that we just don't hear very often. So I'd love to reiterate that in any of the presentations that we do. So guys, we're going to move into marriage and intimate partner relationships with first responders. Ideally, when Rachel and I present this, we'd love to have both partners in there because there's working together. Viewing life as a team is very, very helpful. So we'd like to have everybody in there, but there's still takeaways, even if you're single or even if your partner's not involved in this training. We're going to talk about hypervigilance quite a bit in this section, but Dr. Gil Martin just nails it on the head in his book, Emotional Survival for Law Enforcement. Most of us haven't been trained in this. and not knowing about it, not knowing it exists, we allow it to rip apart our marriages and our lives because we swing in that pendulum from super alert at work to almost indifferent or uncaring at home. And it's not that we intend to, it's a biological response that a lot of times we can't control. So we've got to be intentional, and we've got to build steps into our day so we draw awareness to that and we start changing that behavior. So we're there for our loved ones when we come home. You'll notice intentionality is weaved throughout all three of these sections that we do. Marriage, you've got to be intentional. So we start out with facts, and we did that intentionally because I want y'all to hear the facts louder than you hear the myth. Fact is, a great marriage takes hard work, and it takes being intentional. Now, the myth you see in Hollywood and you hear that marriage should be easy, it just comes natural and everything should flow. Any of us that have been married for a while can tell you that is just not the way that marriage works. It is hard work. Another big fact that we like to put out there is love is a decision. Emotions are going to change over time. You're not going to love everything your spouse does. You're not going to love everything that your partner does. But for that relationship to last, you've got to make the decision to commit to that individual and love them even when you don't like the way that they're behaving. Now, Hollywood and society has you believing that love is the emotion you experience throughout the relationship or at the beginning of the relationship. Well, there may be love there, but generally at the beginning of the relationship, there's more baser needs being met. It's more of a lust, more of an infatuation. It's not that true love that has grown from getting to know that individual and being in the trenches with them. Stressors around the family, shift work. Shift work can be great. My wife and I used to joke about that all the time, that shift work was the key to our marriage because we just didn't get to see each other. We're like ships passing in the night. That's not always the case. It actually could lead to some really bad habits. It could lead to some taking advantage of the situation. So you've got to be careful with the shift work. It's mandatory in this career. It is something that we can't get away from. We are a 24/7, 365 career. We are needed every day. That shift work, be careful in managing it. You've got to develop a habit and hobby and lifestyle that fits your life, that benefits your partner and benefits you and benefits your family. Another struggle that law enforcement has is we link our identity so strongly to our career. Not only do we do it, but everybody else does it. When we're at the party with the spouse who isn't in law enforcement, if your spouse isn't a law enforcement officer, you go to the party. How are you identified? It's generally they're going to be like, oh yeah, that's my husband, Pat the cop, or that's, hey, that's Rachel's husband, Pat the cop. Everybody paints us in that picture. Our identity gets tied to the hypervigilance because we have to be so alert on the job. And hypervigilance, and we'll talk about this in a minute, is a great thing in certain aspects. Another danger to our job is isolation from experiences. For years, I tried to keep my wife safe because she is not a law enforcement officer. She doesn't like the blood, the guts, the gory aspect of the job that we do, but oftentimes that's what we have to deal with. So how can I communicate to her what I've been dealing with at work and bring her into my world without laying out the blood and guts? So you've got to learn each other's communication style, and you got to learn what your partner can take and is acceptable to them. And just the general impact of stress on relationships. Y'all, we have an incredibly stressful job. We don't get to make many bad choices while we're on shift. We almost have to be 100% accurate in everything we do. And that weighs on us. And then we add that onto ourselves and seeking for that perfectionism. So that weighs on us. So think about how that's impacting your life, and think about ways that you and your partner can work together to relieve some of that stress. Like I mentioned, hypervigilance is fantastic. Hypervigilance is a natural thing. While we're on the street, it keeps us alive. It's a primal response. It gives us faster responses, gives us better vision, It increases our hearing so we can hear that bad guy creeping up on us when we're sitting there cruiser spooning with somebody. It's a great thing until it's not. Dr. Gilmartin, once again, nails it on the head. The working officer who socially engages with individuals and practices alert and alive officer safety while on duty can have a hard time responding to just a normal conversation at home, and how detrimental that is for your relationships, for your marriages. So we've got to mitigate this hypervigilance. While it's fantastic at work, it's a double-edged sword and it cuts against us while we're at home. So to mitigate that, remember your identity outside of law enforcement. You were something before you were a law enforcement officer. Whatever passions you had before you were a law enforcement officer, assuming they were healthy passions, keep them. Get back to, I love to fish. I don't do it nearly enough. I need to get back to fishing. I need to remember that I'm more than a detective, that I'm a husband, that I'm a father, that I'm a son, that I'm a friend. Develop interests outside of work. I said about my fishing. I need to get out there and do that more. I'm horrible about doing that, but I need to be better. Develop relationships with people who aren't in law enforcement. Keep your worldview as broad as possible. It helps to mitigate that hypervigilance. So some basic tips on strengthening your marriage. Once again, I'm going to mention this word intentionality, but you've got to set time apart to be together, to keep those flames alive. You've got to be intentional about your time together. Develop a joint hobby other than sex. Sex is probably a great hobby, but you got to do something more than that. Eventually, it's gonna wear off. Your sexual drive diminishes as you age. It's just one of those things. It's a fact of life. So set goals and dream together. Every year, my wife and I try to begin the year by setting goals for the year. We have dreams for 5 years. So develop a way that works in your life to dream together and share together. Develop a decompression scenario. Like when I used to come home when I worked patrol and the kids were young, my wife would keep the kids away for a little bit. I would go, I would shower, I'd change into dad clothes from police clothes. And psychologically, while I'm doing that, I'm also preparing my mind to re-engage with my family instead of treat them like they're suspects, because they don't like to be treated like we treat suspects at work. So, and share your fears and concerns with them. So money management for first responders. This is where I really, really love to communicate, because this is the best thing. Now, none of us got into this career field to become millionaires. We all pretty much knew that that wouldn't be the end goal. But I'm here to tell you it can be if that's what you want, especially if you start early. With the advantage of having, if your agency provides a pension or your state provides a pension, in addition to that, you can invest smaller amounts of money and still come out as what Dave Ramsey terms a net worth millionaire. That simply means what you own is worth over $1 million. So your house, your cars, and all that, as long as they're all paid off, those are all assets. Those aren't debts. Those aren't liabilities. I will acknowledge once again, Dave Ramsey's Financial Peace University. It's a fantastic program. If any of y'all are looking to get on board with your finances and learn how to manage money kind of in an old school type of way, great program. It's 8 weeks, and it changed our lives, and we've lived a debt-free lifestyle for the past 10 years or so, and we facilitated the program multiple times. And most everybody that we have in our classes that actually did the work come back to us and tell us how great it is and how much it's changed their life. One of the key takeaways from that, y'all, we have to change our perspective on debt. We need to kind of look at debt as a thief that's stealing from us. It's not there to benefit us. By going into debt, you're sacrificing your future to scratch an itch today. And sometimes we have to do that. I understand. Most people can't afford to go buy a house and put, cash only. A mortgage is considered decent debt. So I'm not going to talk about mortgages, but anything else is what we're going to consider debt. Anything that you owe a balance on is considered debt. Why is debt so devastating? Debt has been linked to increased stress, physical exhaustion. Oftentimes, financial concerns are a reason, or a reason that an individual will use for suicide. It also creates relationship instability. Debt can be very, very damaging. So I'm trying to get y'all out of debt so that you can live freely. Here's some research that kind of proves that point. This professor back in even as far as 2011 was finding that couples with consumer debt fight more. And there's a direct correlation that he's found between couples that have consumer debt and the divorce rate. So the more consumer debt they had, the higher the divorce rate was. So how do you become debt free? Y'all, it's a lot of hard work. It's intentionality, but it is so worth it. The first step is I need to get you guys living on a budget. Budget is just a money plan. Then we're going to move you to a starter emergency fund, pay off your debt, fully funded emergency fund while you're investing, saving for the kids' future, and paying extra on the mortgage. And then you get to have fun with your money after that. Why do we do a budget, y'all? Would you execute a search warrant without having a plan? I don't think you would. And that's all this is this is simply a plan telling your money where to go before, instead of wondering where it went. I love that quote from John Maxwell, and I just about always use it. There are a few things you need to know about budgets. They do fail, and these are the top 5 reasons why a budget would fail. 1 is you don't actually do it. 2, you don't live by it. Now, as y'all learn how to budget, because this is a learning process, you're going to leave things out. There's things that kids, baseball registration, you're going to forget. You know, the PTA funds, you're going to forget. That's okay. Learn from it, put it in there, and move on. You've got to make these budgets as unique as your individual lifestyle. And the other key to living on the budget is you've got to give yourself some grace and some blow money. Blow money is money that you have every pay period that you're not accountable to your spouse or your significant other for, that you just get to go spend on whatever it is, and it's a predetermined amount. My wife and I, we used an incredibly low amount. We use $40 a paycheck each as our blow money. So when I talk about a starter emergency fund, it's $1,000. And I want you to get that $1,000 as fast as you can. In law enforcement, we're often blessed because we get to work side jobs. So we can work that extra, throw that money in that savings account, and it just sits there. Savings is critical. Every time that I did a Financial Peace University as a participant and not a facilitator, Rachel and I would have car problems, but we had that $1,000 emergency fund, so we were able to fix that car problem without going into further debt. And that's what it's there for. It's there to catch those bad things that happen in life. So $1,000 as quick as you can, get it in the savings account, and you don't touch it. You let it sit there. Some of the keys to getting out of debt: you got to stop borrowing money. That means living within your means. You also got to increase your income. Like I said, those side jobs, those off-duty jobs as a police officer is a great way to do that. Is a great way to get that extra money to pay off debt. But I don't want you guys including that in your standard budget. That's just extra money to get you out of debt. Not to go buy a car with right now, not to go on vacations right now. That money from the side jobs is not part of your regular budget. That is just to pay off debt, to get out of this debt cycle quicker and quicker. So debt, what do I mean by debt? Debt is anything that you owe money on, anything except for your house, but we do consider it a good debt. The house would be a good debt. Y'all, Getting out of debt isn't about math. So some of the things I'm about to tell you mathematically probably won't make sense to you, but that's okay. It's about psychology and it's about momentum. That's why I like the debt snowball versus any other method to get out of debt. Debt snowballs, you list all your debts. And you put your extra money on your first one, but we'll get into that in just a little bit as we walk through that process. No, that's right, I skipped that slide. So what I do, you list all your debts from smallest to largest. You start with your smallest and your minimum payments. You're living on a budget, you're going to find extra money. Everybody that I have convinced to actually do a budget and stick to it has found extra money in their budget, and they're able to apply that to debt. Because we all go out and we just unconsciously buy coffee or go through the drive-through and stuff like that, or we're spending money that we don't even realize that we're spending. You're going to find that when you do your written budget, and change your behavior a little bit to be able to take that money and apply it to your debt. So you're going to pay off that smallest, you're going to have those debts listed smallest to largest, and then your minimum payments on all of them. Any extra money from your budget is going to the smallest debt. You pay that off, then you take all that money and you put it on the next smallest debt. And you continue the process until you pay off all your debts. And the reason we do this is psychologically, you get very motivated when you see that smallest debt fall off. It's that confidence of, oh my goodness, I can do this. The next debt, oh my goodness, I can do this. Oh my goodness. And it keeps you motivated and keeps you engaged. That's why I like the debt snowball as the method, and it's my preferred method to pay off the debt. Your fully funded emergency fund is simply 3 to 6 months of your living expenses tucked away in a savings account that you're not touching. It's just for emergencies. Now, how do you determine 3, 6, however many months? Job security. The easiest way to do that is job security. As law enforcement, highly unlikely when the economy takes a downturn, we're going to get laid off. We're going to have job security. Now, we may do something, screw up and get fired, yes, but job security from the economy standpoint is pretty solid. It's on our side. So we can get by with the smaller. We can get by with like 3 to 4 months of income if you have a self-employed individual. If your significant other is self-employed, y'all may want to look at 6 months or maybe even 9 months of your expenses put aside. That way you're going to have a little bit more cushion just in case something happens and they get laid off. Once you have this 3 to 6 months sitting over there, you're going to start investing 15% of your pre-tax income into retirement accounts. I prefer you to use Roth when you do this, because Roth, you're paying the taxes now. So when you retire, there's no tax consequence on it. It grows tax-free. You pull it out in retirement, you don't have to worry about it. I want you to use mutual funds that have a long history, at least 10 years. But I would encourage you to go longer than that, because the past 10 years, we've been in this incredible bull market. So everything looks like it's a phenomenal investment if it just has a 10-year history. So look for something that has a longer history, that's been through some bear markets, that's been through some downturns like we're seeing right now. If you can still get a 10 to 12% return, that's what you're going to want to put your money into. And you want to be diversified. You don't want it all going into one set fund. As you're doing this 15%, you're also, if you have kids, putting a little bit of that money in there for your kids' college fund, if they plan to go to college. And if you can afford that, even more than that, you're going to pay extra on the mortgage on the house. Get that debt paid down even quicker. And then finally, once you're out of debt, you've got all your investments working, you live generously. The best thing you can do, the most fun you can have with money, is to help others with it. You get to that point in life when you get to go out on a Christmas dinner and you can leave the server an extra $100 tip. Or if you have a neighbor who's going through some hard times, maybe their water shut off, maybe their power shut off. you can pay that bill for them and they never even know it. Those are really cool feelings and experiences to have. So I encourage you, once you get out of debt, get your investments going, get that solid financial footing, live generously. So y'all, Rachel and my Caim Coaching's goal is to develop healthy officers, personally, relationally, and financially. I hope that your goal is to improve your mental resilience, your marriage and interpersonal relationships, and your money management. Like I said, this is just a 40-minute hour webinar, so we can't go into a whole lot of detail with everything. But if you guys are interested in seeing a little bit more about our backgrounds, why we do what we do, what kind of makes us uniquely gifted, please check out our website. If y'all have any questions, there's my email. Y'all feel free to email me, but we do still have some time left for questions and answers. So I look forward to answering any questions, and thank y'all for being here.
All right, so let's Nicholas, I see your chat there. Why don't you email Pat and see if you can work out trying to get Pat. He lost track a little bit about and you were kind of moving a little fast, but that's okay. It was a short time frame. Now leave that up. Leave that up. I want people to be able to see your email address and stuff. So go ahead and leave that up. I will say a couple things about your presentation. Number one, I never knew it early on in my career, but having people outside of law enforcement was an incredible factor for me. I didn't learn that till later, how important that was. I have a big extended family all over the state. We traveled a lot, didn't get to spend a lot of time with other cops. Sometimes weekends were taken with birthdays and weddings and stuff. And that really kept my mind, kind of disengaged from law enforcement. So I think that is a huge factor, that idea of having friends and people to speak with outside of law enforcement. The other thing I will say with 100% agreement is debt creates fear and creates stress. I did Dave Ramsey in 2007. Me and my wife have benefited, not just the stress aspect. We did Dave Ramsey with 4 moving on 5 kids. So anybody can do it, guys. Anybody can do it if you put your mind to it. All right. Great stuff, Pat. We do have Monica Ruelas. You had your hand up. If you'd like to speak, you are available to talk, Monica, if you have a question. Okay, Monica, you put your hand down. I'm assuming you don't want to talk, so that's all right too. Any questions put some questions in the chat, or if you want to raise your hand while we're waiting. Where are you, Mark, if you're still there, I'd love to hear some reaction to Pat's message here.
Mike, can you hear me?
Yeah, we got you, Mark.
Hey, first of all, Pat, Mike, great job. As usual, you guys are phenomenal, and I truly appreciate it. Just a quick comment. I like how you touched the mental health aspect of law enforcement. We know law enforcement can be totally toxic. What I really loved is how you talked about God and family. God and family come first. The job comes after that. And you guys truly, truly nailed that. Thank you both, and God bless.
I appreciate it, Mark. And Mark DeBono and his group do a great job on the mental resiliency, and his message is really amazing. Pat, one other thing I'd like to say is I love your point on, focus on what you can control as to what you can't control. Cops are notorious for griping and complaining, normally about things we have no control over, like command staff decisions, politicians' decisions, city manager decisions. And it creates such huge amounts of stress within the organization. I tell people when I teach, the most powerless moment most cops have is the moment they walk into shift briefing, because you have no power as a line officer within your organization. where you do have power, unfortunately, is out on the street with our community. So I try to talk to command staff and say, hey, listen, the stress you're putting on within the organization, they're taking that to the road, right? They're taking that to the community. So figure out how you can do that. But it's a great message too. I always tell people too, is a lot of ways we give our ability and our own happiness to other people. Like we're saying, hey, I have low morale because of what you're doing. And I understand that the stress that command staff put, trust me, I was there. You were there too, Pat. Mark was there. But at some point, we have to decide to be happy for ourselves and take control back of our own happiness, right, away from command staff. That's a tough message for line folks to hear, that you're in control of your own morale. But realistically, it's true. You have to be in control of your own happiness. Otherwise, we're giving people power over us.
Yes, absolutely. And it's tough. I gotta, it's
Yeah.
not, it's a tough challenge, but yeah, we are creatures that focus on power and control. And when we give that away so easily, it's strange. It's a very odd dynamic.
Yeah, okay. We got a message from Douglas Thompson. He wants to know how you can bring Dave Ramsey to larger agencies. Again, Dave Ramsey it's a national brand. I mean, Dave does his thing. If I was you, I'd reach out to Pat at that email that he has right there, and maybe Pat, throw that in the chat too while we're sitting here. I see it on the screen. Throw it in the chat, and email Pat and try to figure out how that works and how he's done it where he is. Like I facilitated Dave's Ramsey at our church. A lot of these things go through religious organizations because Dave Ramsey is Christian based, but we've tried to bring it to our agency and it just never caught on. And it's a struggle sometimes to bring it because you really need the husband and wife there. And a lot of guys want to separate their wives from the organization as best they can. All right, I think that concludes it for today. Pat, great work. Thank you so much. Your message is incredible. I was so happy when you agreed to do a short presentation for us. I think what you and your wife are doing and your coaching team is fantastic. We'll stay on for a little bit, but that concludes it. If anybody has any questions, again, if you want to reach out to Pat directly, trust me, go ahead and do that. And if you want something from Advanced Police Concepts, come on, you email me. I'll put the email here. We're still looking for 2023 host sites too. So if your organization wants to host some great training or host Pat, just let us know. We'll get the message to Pat, let Pat know. He can come to your organization, and everybody stay in touch and be safe.
Thank y'all for being here. Thank y'all for your time. It's a true pleasure having y'all here and being able to walk through my passion to help first responders and in particular law enforcement.
No, there's no CEUs for this. No certificates. This is just a free presentation for a learning opportunity.
Oh, my wife actually made it on. She raised her hand. Go ahead, Rachel. Can you talk?
Go ahead, Rachel. You can talk. I think. Hold on. Let the wrong person talk. Rachel Burr. Come on. There you go. All right, there she is.
Can you hear me now?
I get, yeah, sorry.
Okay. Yeah, I did make it on. I'm sorry I wasn't able to present with Pat today, but I did want to mention to I think Douglas, who had asked about the information for Dave Ramsey or bringing Dave Ramsey to the agency. You know, that's definitely something that you can reach out to Ramsey Solutions about, but obviously we keep it as a component of our work as well. We acknowledge Ramsey Solutions, but it is a part of what we bring. And the reason we keep it as one part is because all of the parts are important, in our opinion. Certainly the money piece is really valuable, but we really also want to see agencies support and invest in the relationships, because I think they'll actually get a huge return on their investment for allowing spouses to join with LEOs to gain some of this information and strengthen their marriage. So I just wanted to share that. Thanks.
No, 100% agree. 100% agree. All right, I think that's going to conclude it. Pat and Rachel, well, I'm glad you jumped on right at the last minute. Pat, stay in touch, brother. And you let me know what APC can do. Okay, somebody just sent you a email and they want to make sure you don't know it's suspicious. All right. Hey, God bless. And I love what you're doing. Just keep it up. And thanks for sharing this with, I think we had about 40 people on the webinar today. So your message is getting out there and making a difference.
Oh, I forgot that we'll be presenting actually in Lutz, just north of Tampa, on February 20th. We're doing a 4-hour class, and it's tying all this into Dr. Olivia Johnson's Fatal 10 suicide prevention techniques. So we'll be presenting down there at the Suicide Prevention Conference for the state of Florida.
That's awesome, dude. All right. Keep it up. And we're going to call it quits. All right. And I'll send out a link, Pat, to the recording so you can share with whoever you want. Okay.